This whole issue of persistence reminds me of a bedtime story that my grandmother used to read to me. Now you have to understand that my grandmother was from the hills of North Carolina. She talked kind of like this. To make matters worse, she wasn't very educated and couldn't read very well, and to make matters far worse, she was cross-eyed. Which made for some of the most interesting bedtime stories a little boy could ever hear. And so I would like to share with you my favorite bedtime story, in character as my grandma, the cross-eyed storyteller. Once upon a time, in a Corin country, there lived a beautiful girl, and her name was Rindercella. Now Rindercella lived in a hig house with a mugly upstubber. We're talking ugly. And her two sad blisters. Now Rindercella's two sad blisters were dry school hop-outs. They just sat around doing nothing all day while poor old Rindercella got ducks doing all the woody dirt. Flopping the moors, doshing the wishes, chickasee in the frickin'. Now also in this same Corin country there lived a pranksome hens who dwelt in a cancy castle. And the pranksome hens decided to throw a bouncy fall in the cancy castle, and so he invited the pitch people from Rosamount to attend the bouncy fall. This, of course, being the kind of bouncy fall thrown in Corin country spot pranksome hens in their cancy castle. Now when Rindercella's mugly upstuther, we're talking mugly, and her two sad blisters heard about the bouncy fall, they went out and bought some drancy fesses to wear to the bouncy fall. But Rindercella couldn't go on account of she had nothing but ruddy gags. So Rindercella went to her mugly upstuther and her two sad blisters and said, I want to buy a drancy fest so I can buy off to the bouncy fall too. They said, you're got knowing. She said, I can't do. They said, you Nora. She said, now what? They said, Smoley Hope's girl, you got to stay home and kill them mouse. At last the day of the bouncy fall arrived, and Rindercella's mugly other, and I mentioned she was mugly, and her two sad blisters pulled on their drancy fesses and bowed off to the roll, but Rindercella couldn't call her account of she and nothing but ruddy gags. So when Rindercella's mugly other and her two sad blisters pulled on their drancy fesses and bowed off to the roll, Rindercella just cracked down his side. But while old Rindercella was a critting in a side, a saying and a wobbing, Sullivan! There was a binding lash of flight, and who should appear to her but her hairy modgutter. And Rindercella's hairy modgutter meant some magic. And there before Rindercella appeared a drancy fess, all covered with rurals and hooties. And a pair of sly slippers, not to mention a luxurious loach pulled by Hicksite horses. Rindercella squeezed into that drancy fess and she slid on them sly slippers, but before she could crawl into her luxurious loach to bite off to the roll, Rindercella's hairy modgutter interrupted it. She said, Rindercella, you had better hit gone before midnight, or I'll turn you into a tumpy. Rindercella crawled into her luxurious loach and bowed off to the roll. When she arrived, she was dead at the moor by her two sad blisters. But do you know Rindercella was such a beautiful girl that they didn't even recognize her? Oh, but the pranksome hens, he was a-watching Rindercella from a wooden window. He looked one took at Rindercella and said, ooh, wee! Gee, squeezes on a stopsicle pick. I do believe that barrel and the sly clippers and the drancy fest all covered with murals and poobies is more beautiful than Beefy Slooty. He was secretly hoping she'd turn out to be kind of slooty. Hey, Grandma didn't say that part, I added it. They nanced and they nanced all night. And they lay in fove. Sullivan! The struck clock midnight! And Rindercella staced down the ramps. But when she beached the rod, oh dear friends, when she beached the rod, she slopped her dripper. Well, the next day, the pranksome hens bowed all over that Corin country in search of the beautiful girl who had slopped her dripper. At last, he arrived at Rindercella's hig house, and he docked on the door. Well, when Rindercella's mugly upstuther saw that it was the pranksome hens who had docked on her door, she shrieked, Zagooks! 'Tis the pranksome hens, to which the pranksome hens replied, Yea, 'tis I, his loyal wife, the pranksome hens, mugly upstuther. And lo, I have come in search of the beautiful girl whose foot the fast clipper slits. Well, he tried it on her muggly up. And you know, even her feet were muggly. But it didn't did. He tried it on her 2 sad whiskers. It still fit and did. Last, he tried it on Rindercella. And it didn't. So they were married. And lived happily ever after in the Casey Castle of that there foreign country. Now the storm of the morning is this, my friend. Give her gave up. Rindercella lost her pints of hints, but she never gave up. Rindercella got duck stew and all the wordy dirk again, but she still relieved in her beans. So give her gave up. Even when hinds are tarred, give her gave up. If Rindercella hadn't slopped her dripper, she'd have never found her pints of hints. So give her gave up. You can still find your pints of hints. You can still have your Kenzie Fassel. You can still live happily ever after, even if you've slopped your dripper.